Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's the Great White Stoke coming at you from the Great White North. And the subject today is the boomers. And of course, for Southern Paladin, the arbiter of truth, we must add the caveat, not all boomers. Let's keep going. I posit that the world is going to breathe a sigh of relief when the last boomer dies. And here's why. We're talking about a large group of people, a large consumer base that grew up, actually was given the best that America had to give, and they squandered it because they didn't want to be called bad names, like names that started with an R or an anti-Themite. Boomers are very averse to being viewed as not good. They can't stand it. We're talking about a large group of people who were the first group really to grow up propagandized by the TV. And for their entire life, they were told that you're good when you buy stuff, when you stir the economy, when you toe the line, you're good. When you just let anybody in because you're virtuous and you're not the R word or an anti-Themite, you're good. And now we have this large group of this large population group that is aging out, and they're looking around and unironically asking, well, how come you young people don't have a house? How come you young people aren't getting married? How come you young people aren't doing X, Y, and Z? And without a hint of irony or self-awareness. And let's delve into this subject a little bit, because it was a wonderful TikTok video, even though I'm not really interested in TikTok videos, but the guy had some really poignant points. And that was, the boomers were born and raised by the greatest generation, right? Now, the greatest generation went through the hardcore depression, and we're talking about a period in time where there weren't 7-Elevens and Doritos and 99-cent stores and food closets, food banks, nonprofits. If you didn't have money back then, or have a field to go and pick over after the farmers had pulled all the good stuff, you were starving. And there were many people starving. My grandma grew up in that generation, and I heard stories about how, this is why our great grandparents, were canning, right? Our grandparents were saving thread. Everything was seen as, valuable because of the current economic conditions. And then once they got through that Great Depression, and if many of them were traumatized just by that, of a lack of food, of a lack of being able to afford basics like a pair of shoes. There are numerous pictures out there of like little kids barefoot in the snow, picking up coal on the sides of the rail lines or near the mines. Then what happened? World War II happened, and I'm talking about the real World War II, not the small hat documentaries and movies that were inundated with every year to remind us of just how that story really went, because if you don't toe that storyline, well, you're an anti-Themite. But I digress. So they go to World War II, which is a nasty war, right? America, in its virtuousness, drops 2 bombs on Japan, and then quickly tells everybody else, oh, you can't do that. So these people come back, and they are traumatized, they are scarred. and they have children, and they tell their children, this world is rough, you've got to pull yourself up from the bootstraps because no one else is going to do it for you. And this greatest generation proceeds to build a very stable society, and for a lack of better words, a very stable America, to where there is bounty, there is surplus, there is racial, cultural, and ideological homogenization there. People are on the same page for the most part. Now, even though during the 50s, there is a bit of, the stifling of the social scene. So, all the weirdos can't get up in their dresses or go put their sexual organs in human sewers, right? Because that's important, right? People got to feel like, I got to be able to indulge the weirdness. And so the baby boomers are born, and they come into this world thinking that this cultural homogenization, this ideological homogenization, this racial homogenization for the most part, this historical homogenization, this bounty, this surplus, this stable society, they think that's the baseline. And no one ever has any self-awareness because they're being raised on the TV and told that, hey, you got to pull yourself up by the bootstraps. You guys earned this. And they proceed to just tear it down pillar by pillar. And they have such a cognitive dissonance that they can't even fathom. They're being told by their parents that the world is rough, and if you don't pull yourself up by your bootstraps, you're never going to be anything. Then they're handed the world on a silver platter and proceed to tip it over before their children and grandchildren can even have a taste. And then they're looking at the children and the grandchildren, the boomers are, and saying, well, how come you don't have what we have? There was a gentleman making some content online and he's this old fart now, and he's talking about how, I grew up thinking, consumerism was best, and I went to college and I made all this money, and now I realize it's the simple life. And so what I've done is I've bought, my own private beach in Costa Rica and a boat, and now I'm living down here. Without a hint of irony of how they destroyed the world and left it far worse off. And I deal with this again and again. I've had to yell at some boomers because of their antics, right? My children and I nearly get run over in some random parking lot that's empty. We're skateboarding out there, and this boomer comes tearing around, almost hits us, rolls down her window, and asks in a very pissed off tone, "What are you doing here?" I had to check this old woman. I said, "Grandma, we're skateboarding. Go home. Let the young people have a turn at life." Because you get around these boomers, and a lot of them are talking like when they die, the world ends with them. There's just no reason to be around because, and I can see why, because they took it all. And now they're just trying to squeeze the last drops of the berry juice. The berry has long been dried out. It's just an empty husk, and these boomers are just not letting go. They're wringing it all out. We've got to make sure the boomers got the AARP. They've got their discounts. The boomers cannot face any type of, real hardship, which is a shame because, they had to go through Vietnam, and they got a taste of what the government can and will do. They will draft your ass and send you off to war so that Eugene and his corporations can profit, so that Henry Kissinger can profit, so that Zee Boomerz Brzezinski can profit. I mean, it's ridiculous. And they see this, right? Got the Kent State Massacre, 4 dead in Ohio, and it just goes right over them because they got the TV, they've got the American Express, and it's still good. They can go out and buy a house for what they got in their pocket. A man can work one job while his wife stays at home, afford a house, afford a car payment, afford the vacation. It's just ridiculous. These boomers are ridiculous, and the younger generation knows what's up. They know the game. And the boomers, when they're told about what the game is, they can't wrap their head around it. They can't get over the fact that Eugene may not be their real friend. And so this is why I posit that the world is going to breathe a sigh of relief when the boomers go away. At least America will. For a quick minute, and then we're going to have to deal with the unfettered immigration and just the continued degradation of our country, culture, and society. What do you think? Let me know.